Hi everybody, we're leaving on our next trip in 2 weeks, so that's exciting. And we thought we'd make 2 short videos before we leave. One, a little bit about our trip planning process because Duke has pretty much finished the major part of the pre-trip planning now. And then the second short video would be about our plans for where we're going and everything. So, right?
That's right.
Okay. And I thought we could start out a little bit about just our travel background and when we started traveling and everything. So, you want to go first?
Sure. You know the history, right?
I do know the history.
You've
I've read the book.
Read my book. Have you read my book?
I have, and
Okay.
I like your product placement there.
It's just on the shelf there.
Well, that was your first solo trip, right?
Yeah, and that was 1975 and 76, 15 months in Africa and Europe.
That's your journal. So you just finished transcribing your journals and
Yeah,
everything.
pretty
and the
much.
pictures.
Yeah. I kept a diary that, otherwise I wouldn't remember.
No, exactly.
Well, I still remember a lot because it was such an impressionable trip. And then I followed that next trip was 78, 79 was 18 months in Central and South America.
Right. But of course, you traveled a lot as a kid too, right?
Yes, family vacations. I mean, not every year was a big vacation, but when we did do a big vacation every few years, it was big.
All over the U.S. and Canada?
Yeah, we went from New York to California and Canada to Florida. And
Your parents believed a lot in travel, right?
yes, I think they both enjoyed it, but they also definitely thought it was educational and good for the kids to
Pretty
experience
impressive.
it.
Pretty impressive to do that with 5 kids, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, of course.
somewhat unusual.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, now, what about you?
Well, my parents traveled with 4 kids, so I grew up in North Dakota till I was about 13, but then my dad worked for an oil company and we moved to Australia for 5 years. So we lived there 5 years and then we moved to London and that's where I graduated from high school. So all that time we did a lot of traveling, yes.
You spent 5 years in Australia?
Yes.
Do you speak Australian?
No.
Just wondering.
No.
Okay.
I can say good on ya and
Okay,
you know.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, no. And so we traveled as a family to Japan and Thailand and England and Europe and everything, so that was great. Yeah, and we've been to a lot of countries. We've been to what? 45 together, I think.
Is that all?
And you've been to more?
64. I'm going to add 2 on this next trip
Okay.
to get it up to 66.
And I've been to 48, so
Yeah.
not nearly as many as you, but that's okay. So let's talk about how we plan trips. You are pretty
No,
much...
we didn't talk about our past trips together.
Oh,
We
okay,
were just
yeah.
doing
Okay.
you and me.
Okay, now that it's you and me for the last 20 years.
Yeah. One second.
You
Spreadsheet.
forgot something?
I forgot something.
Okay. What'd you forget?
Spreadsheet.
Oh, okay.
Past trips.
Did you remember your glasses?
Got my glasses. It's all blurry. Oh, there. Yeah, this, I just printed out since 2010. And since that time, we've been to Europe 9 times. And of those 9, 7 of them were in Spain at least part of the time. South America, 3 trips. Mexico, 3 trips. And can I run through the years real quick?
Sure.
Because, 2010 we went to Australia. 2011 we went to Mexico. 2012 we went to Canada twice. We actually did pretty much Canada all the way from Prince Edward Island to Vancouver.
Well, and we did Mexico all the way from the U.S. border to into Guatemala. So.
No, that was a later trip. 2013 we never left the country.
Okay.
2014 we did 2 trips. We flew down to Mexico for 10 days. And then we did a road trip where we went all the way down to Guatemala.
Okay.
Left the car in Mexico at the border.
Most of our time in Mexico was driving trips. So.
Yeah, we drove all over.
Yep, it was great.
And just leaving from the house here and south.
Yep.
And that was the last time we were in Mexico, was 2014. Which means it's been a long time because I've been there a lot, even pre.
Right, you lived there for a while.
Yeah, I lived there for a year and a half.
That's part of why you.
And I love
Spanish is so good.
And I love Mexico. I love
It is. It's a great
It's just a great country. Unfortunately, it's not. Well, it's just not as safe as it used to be, especially driving and going just all over in the country. So, you know,
Right.
it's still safe in spots, but you have to
Yes.
pick your spots, and
Right.
it's
Right.
just not as
Right.
it's very unfortunate. But anyway, that was the last. 2014 was the last time. 2015 we didn't do anything overseas. Just in that 2010 to 2015 we were a lot of road trips in the U.S.
Yes.
Now we've seen it all.
No, we haven't.
Well,
yes.
no. So starting in 2016, we did a trip to Europe and a trip to South America. 2017, Europe and South America again. 2018, Europe and Europe. 2019 was South America. Oh no, Europe and South America again. And then 2020 we did just one short interrupted trip because of COVID.
Right. Right.
We were in Spain when they threw us out. And then, of course, 2021, we were also pandemic restricted. So we, I guess in the fall, went to Europe. And then last year we did 2 European trips.
So talking about the pandemic's a good segue into trip planning, because the credits we had from things we had to cancel are part of what determined where we were going to go on this trip, right?
Right, and those, eventually expire or whatever. I mean, that one from 2020 was still good, the Norwegian, but, Norwegian doesn't fly transatlantic anymore. They fly a lot of flights in Europe, mostly from Scandinavia countries to other parts of Europe. So we, had a lot of credit there, and then we had a credit on our canceled flight from Morocco to Spain, and we're going Morocco to Spain again, but we had to use Iberia because that's where the credit was. So first of all, our objective was to find something cheap to pretty much anywhere in Europe. And then we can start using our credits and points or whatever.
So the first step in the travel planning process, you always buy the air tickets to and from Europe first. And our model is to go for about 2 months.
I mean, we were going for like 9 weeks. We'd kind of gone a little bit longer. We got to 9 weeks, and now we're kind of going the other way. This next trip's exactly 8 weeks.
Yeah, but we might do 9 weeks again sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
8 or 9 weeks.
So then what do you do after you've got the tickets?
Then I kind of think of a route.
Right.
And, a general route. Some of it, I want to go back to this place or this area, maybe not the same place. I definitely want to go to Morocco because we'd planned it last year and didn't go, and
Right.
it sounded good last year, so it was,
Right.
and then after I get the general route, I get the rental cars pretty early.
But part of what getting the route also is that you look for good hotels.
It's a big part. Well, a big part of our travel experience is hotels and restaurants.
Yes. They make it.
A nice hotel room and a great meal. I mean, that makes the day.
Yes.
I don't really need anything more. So yeah, a lot of times when we're going from point A to point C, but we need a point B somewhere in there, then it's totally determined by where can, this place, oh, here's a really nice looking place to stay,
Right.
So where we go is often determined where we can find what looks like. I mean, sometimes it's not as good as the pictures, but when you get there, but that's a big factor in what
So
we
you
do.
get the hotels before you get the rental cars, or the rental cars?
No, the rental cars.
The rental cars and the public
Be-
transportation?
Because the rental cars are always refundable.
Ah.
It used to be, the general rule was right up until your time that you had reserved, you could cancel. Now, a lot of them are, it's 2 days ahead. But still, 2 days ahead. So there's no problem with booking it. And then if you find a better deal, have to change it or whatever, you just cancel and rebook. Which,
And then you do the hotels?
yeah, then I do after the hotels, and I just go through from the beginning of the trip.
And how do you pick hotels? How do you find hotels?
Primarily, I use booking.com and hotels.com. In Europe, booking.com has more places. Domestically, hotels.com is usually a better bet. In the cities in Europe, both of them are going to have lots of places. And so then it's a matter of, I always check the prices because they differ often quite a bit. And then we sometimes book, in Spain, we like to stay at the Paradors hotel chain, government run. And so that's booked directly. And then, there's a few others that I always check direct. If it's a Malia, we pretty much like that hotel chain, so often booked directly. And on this upcoming trip, there was another one that we had never stayed at this chain. I never heard of it, but it was just I booked a place in Barcelona, and then I was booking the place in Madrid, and I thought, no, wait a minute. That's the name of the place in Barcelona. And then I was confused,
Right?
And it was because it was the same chain,
Right.
which I'd never heard of before. And it just, out of all the hotels in Barcelona and all the ones in Madrid, I ended up choosing
And you ended up booking those direct also?
And then I looked direct, and
Okay.
and it's, it was about the same price, but if we ever go back, then we'll have some points, but we can't use them on this trip. But anyway,
And then to keep track of everything,
boy, that ain't gonna happen here.
No.
No,
So you,
no
you
way.
create our spreadsheet's pretty darn important. For where do we go today? Yes. And what do you put on the spreadsheet?
Well, it has the date, including the day of the week,
Right.
Tuesday, February 21st, we're
Right.
in flight, I guess. And then it has, the next column is if we're with someone.
Right.
Because
Who we're
our
traveling
coming trip, we have 2 different couples that will be with us each for about 18 days each.
Okay.
Then we have the name of the hotel. And then we have, important notes about, the rental car pickup or what time, or we have a tour of something booked or whatever. Then we have these columns relating to the hotel. Check-in time, which is something we've added to the spreadsheet because
Especially when you're traveling, like I don't know, I've noticed it a lot in France.
in
that
France,
If we arrive at 1 o'clock, out in the country, this isn't, excuse me, for big hotels. But out in the country, you shouldn't arrive before the check-in time unless you've arranged it in advance, right?
check-in time at the big hotels is usually 4 p.m. and some of the smaller ones it was 5.
Right.
So, like we have to check out by 11 the day before the previous place, and we can't check in till 5, and it's a 1-hour drive or hour and a half. It's kind of restricting on.
Well, you better plan to do some other things.
You have to.
Yeah.
But so it's good to know when you can check in.
Yes.
And they're sometimes very strict about it.
Yes.
Almost all of them that had a 4 p.m. check-in, I requested
An earlier check-in.
earlier 3 p.m. I didn't want to stretch my luck. Asked for an hour, and they all said yes. And then if we're driving, it has the time between places.
That's the last column there.
Yeah, hour and
That's
23 minutes, 3
Okay.
hours and 11 minutes, that sort of thing.
let's see here. So I think that's most of the planning stuff. Oh, how do you choose whether we're taking public transportation or a car?
Well, we used to do public transportation just about the whole trips, with maybe a little rental car. But then you're usually going city to city, and you don't want a car when you're in the city.
Right, but when you're in the, but we enjoy the countryside.
But we like to hit the countryside and stay in the countryside and visit things,
Right.
randomly. We're going down the road, and there's a sign that, okay, turn here, let's go check out those Roman ruins or whatever.
Yes, right.
So on this next trip, it's except for the first and the last week, we're in a rental car.
Right.
And that includes all the time we're with another couple.
So, obviously, most of the time we don't book restaurants in advance unless there's something really special, right? We haven't got any restaurants.
Unless it's included.
Right.
And that is often, so we use Tripadvisor, is that right?
For restaurants. We found
To
some
find
great
restaurants.
restaurants that way.
And like, we're going to these paradors that are in small towns. Of course, the parador is always going to have a restaurant, but we don't want to eat at the parador restaurant every night. So even ahead of time, I would look to see if there are other restaurants in that little town.
Right.
Because if there aren't, then I'll book the package that includes dinner. But if there's something looks good, then I won't.
Okay. Let's see, I think we've covered about everything, haven't we?
Restaurants.
Yeah. Oh, and I was going to say, if you have questions about our booking process or anything, or just how we travel, don't hesitate to put them in the comments below.
I think we're forgetting
Always
something.
enjoy comments. I think we are too, but
Okay.
we could talk about it during our second video, which will be the one that talks about the next trip and all the places we're going.
Not something I was gonna mention. Doesn't have anything to do with planning or the next trip.
Yes,
The name of your YouTube channel
our YouTube channel.
is Boomers Without Borders.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if everybody understands what boomers are. I bet a lot of if there's international,
Well, it's a
foreign
derogatory-
people, that term would not be common. And I doubt if you learned that in English class,
Yeah,
what boomers are.
But if you ask a lot of people what boomers are, they just say old people like us.
Yeah,
They don't
even
understand
young
what the term-
people here don't know what
But they don't know
No,
where the term comes from,
they
perhaps.
don't. So maybe you should explain.
Well, it's because there was a baby boom after World War II, and we were part of that baby boom. And so
Okay.
all through our life,
Yeah,
there's
and
been...
we weren't born immediately after World War II, but after World War II, all those servicemen came home
started having babies.
and started having babies, and it lasted for
Right.
15 years. There was a surge in
Yep.
births.
Births.
Yeah, that's the word I was thinking of.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a real surge.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
All right, so we'll keep doing the blog and doing the videos on this trip. So please subscribe so you don't miss a single one. And we'll sign off this time until we, in a few minutes, we're going to do the second video about our travel plans. So thanks, everybody.